So, thanks everybody for joining this afternoon. Welcome. We're talking about what's next for security operations this afternoon. I'll introduce the other people that are on this call shortly. If you have a fire alarm, clearly we're all working at home, so please find your nearest exit, which you should know where it is. Nothing else is kind of planned to go on this afternoon other than a good discussion around security ops. So, plan today is to talk about cyber threats, skills shortages, how you can best keep pace with attackers in security operations that you run within your businesses. Bytes recently conducted a market report on the state of security operation challenges for last year. This kind of looked at multiple aspects of security operations to delve into how effective they were and the challenges that the organizations face. Maybe, you know, some of you guys answered some of the questions on there for us, and we'll talk about that in a lot more depth today. So my panel is going to help me discuss the report and some of the surprising or maybe kind of unsurprising findings that came out. Before I introduce you to them though, I'm just going to give you a little scene setting. For me, 2020 really can be kind of characterized by three things: COVID-19, Zoom calls, and data breaches. That's kind of the three words I use to sum up 2020. I'm not necessarily sure, given that how 2021 started, that we're going to have much difference, to be honest. Cybercrime's accelerating at an uncontrollable pace, and one that's really unabating, to be honest. Criminals, i.e. the attackers, are innovating or stealing at an incredible rate and are ahead of us as the defenders. And at the moment, we seem to be losing the battle. You know, you just have to look at the number of records that were breached in 2020. That was an estimated 36 billion records. The current world population is only 7.8 billion, which means that everybody on the planet was breached kind of 4.6 times in, you know, last year. Now, you know, we all know that not everyone has been compromised or lost information. Some people were compromised multiple times, other people's not at all. On the backdrop of this, and kind of without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to the very special guests that I've got with me today. So I've got Sam Humphries. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you two truths and a lie about Sam, and see if you can work out during the course of today which ones they are. So Sam heads up strategy in EMEA for Exabeam and has spent 21 years in cybersecurity, but her career still hasn't taken her to a bar to buy her a drink yet. She hates licorice. And the third one is she was the first person to color code TCP packets that contained attack traffic on a network so that they could be more easily identified. Now, the other person with their video on that you'll see there is Patrick Bale. Again, I'm going to tell you two truths and a lie about Patrick. First is Patrick manages the Cortex system engineering team in WEUR for Palo, having joined from Demisto and the Demisto acquisition in 2019. Second fact, Patrick has made the career journey from being a customer through a system integrator and now into a vendor. And the third one, Patrick utterly despises mustard. And I've got one more fact about Patrick. They used to cry a lot when he was Sam's customer. So let me ask the panel to say hello.
Hello. I'm not sure there was a lie in Pat's ones there at all. I think they might all be true.
Well, we'll find out during the course of today. So I'm here as the chairman to keep things running along and you know, look after all of the questions and those kind of things that you may have as we go through today. The chat's open. Please use the chat. Put any questions that you've got in there. Please make them as difficult as possible. I'm really looking forward to giving these two a grilling this afternoon. So please make sure that you know, you give me some ammunition to fire at them. So without holding us up any further, let me go into the first question. So we've got a poll to go along with this question. So Michael, if you can put the poll up for people, we're going to give you a couple of minutes just to answer the poll on this one as well. But the question really is from me to my panel, you know, what's been the biggest challenges for your security team during the last 12 months. And this could be, both your internal security teams at the vendors, but also, the things that you've got customers talking to you about as well. Either of you, any of you can pick it up, or not at all if you don't.
All of them. No, I think it's been a tough year, obviously, for a load of reasons. I think the scattering to the breeze of most employees was just a huge challenge for organisations completely. Having to figure out what to do with devices, what to do with services that were in-house, how to even run things like help desks and security teams on a remote basis. How do people know where to go report something when they'd normally walk across the room and talk to Dave and say, hello, all right, Dave, I think this email looks a bit dodgy. You haven't got that anymore. So I think that was the first thing of just almost being like, what on earth do we do? Now everyone's had to go home so quickly, and how do we provide at least the same level of service when we've got people who are on machines that aren't ours, that are now on bring their own home networks, that maybe not aren't secure as the the inner echelons of the network were back in the olden times. So yeah, I think there's all of these things are true for sure. If I had to pick one, I'm torn between two, if I'm honest. I think the cloud services one is hard because people were spinning up cloud services like nobody's business so that they could very quickly support working from home. Definitely at the speed of business and not necessarily at the speed of security. I think also the other one I think is around phishing, and just it took Cybercriminals seconds to pivot. It really did. Within I think Q1 last year, 9 of the top 10 topics in phishing emails were related to working from home in some format, and the last one was Valentine's Day, which shows up every single year.
Yeah.
Oh, Patrick, thoughts?
Yeah, so it looks like the remote supporting users has come out top of that one. So I'd say between that and phishing, I think the whole attack surface has completely changed. Like Sam mentioned, spot on. Yeah, people using different devices, but at different times. And in like the legacy SOC mindset is, you have static rules in place for if user logs in at 6 p.m. at night, then bad, then tell me about it. And that's a burden on the SOC to then do something with it. But nobody's working a normal day now. Like, I'm trying to do homeschooling, a terrible job on my daughter, and probably undoing every good bit of work the school's done over the last few years. But as a result, I'm working earlier and working later. So my time shift has changed, and like security has had to adapt to those level of changes, I think. And yeah, like the phishing, the user education, I think is probably the biggest deterrent we've seen with phishing attempts, but you can't do that. You can't keep enforcing that. There's so many emails coming in, so it's incredibly difficult to prioritize those emails. Oh, I need to do my phishing as well as do my day job at different times of the day.
Certainly. And I think there's a few interesting things I'll pull up out of these results. So I've been asked to share the results with people. So visibility of devices 0%, visibility of user account activity 13%, remotely supporting users 40%, increase in successful phishing attempts 13%, ransomware 0%, securing new cloud services 13%, headcount reduction or freeze 13%, somewhere else 7%. Now I find a couple of these things very, very interesting that's come back on the biggest challenges. Nobody's mentioned ransomware, yet we absolutely know that there's been a massive increase in ransomware last year. Also, visibility of devices is something that's strange for me, that nobody's had issues in that area. When I talk to a lot of customers and we go and do forensics and incident management with them, and one of the things that they don't have is visibility of devices or the ability to be able to roll out software remotely. What do you both think?
I think visibility is the first pillar, right? If you can't, and it's the hardest challenge out of the lot, because if you can't see what you've got, you can't protect it. It's fairly straightforward. And maybe this is low. I think I saw a lot of organizations last year to think more about the credential than the devices themselves, because if they couldn't do something with the devices, they could at least pay attention to where a credential was being used across the different services, and they could lock things up or allow access on that. But I honestly thought that would show up a bit more than it did. What do you think, Pat?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the change of infrastructure, like now everyone has a laptop. They're not necessarily, you've got your walls, the perimeter has moved, has shifted, has dissolved, whatever we want to say. But everyone at home has their own personal laptop that they're probably working on a phone that they've either been issued by the company. So I think there's been a change of way that companies are issuing devices. Like you have your device, you should go through it. You probably don't. I'd be more inclined to think about, are you coming via the VPN? Because I keep turning off my VPN because it's slow for these conferences. But yeah, I think that visibility is key, but I don't think that's changed that much. And I'm surprised about ransomware, to be completely honest with you. Like the numbers for ransomware keep going up. Yeah, sure, it's more of a lower hanging fruit or act of desperation in sometimes. And so we're seeing more sophisticated things like SolarWinds, God help us, with supply chain attacks. But ransomware is still really, I'm surprised that's as low as it is.
I'm glad it's as low as it is. I'll say that, because it's horrible. It's absolutely horrible when you have to deal with that. And dealing with it remotely is just a nightmare.
Yeah.
Normally you just get a machine off somebody and probably wipe it if you weren't able to spend time doing a bit of forensics around it. Someone's at home and they're like been hit with ransomware. That's tough to get them to recover from that. You can't get them up and running in an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think again, it comes back to the security operations that people have got in place in, within their environment, and, and the tools and processes that they have available to them in order to be able to reach out into those devices, remotely wipe and rebuild, or, remotely conduct, forensic or investigation services at scale. What are the peer review thinking, in terms of top tips for security ops around remote rebuild and remote access and kind of remote management that's really going to help people today to focus down on important stuff?
Yeah, I mean that kind of, it's in between the lines of being a SOC task and then falling back into IT. So how we do it and how other customers do it is, that's a process. Laptop needs to be rebuilt for whatever reason, then the SOC is accountable to request that to IT and monitor that. So as we're talking about automation, that's something that you could automate behind the scenes to say, kick off the laptop request, go, ask the user if they want Windows or Mac, rebuild, IT team do, procure, etc., etc. So I think that laptop rebuild process is taking time because everything's a delay in getting stuff shipped, but it's a process you could automate. It's not unique anytime. There might be nuances in departments and stuff, but if we're talking about a laptop that's been compromised, under the hood, a process that you could kick off with a playbook or a workflow every single time consistently.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, I remember in the olden days where trying to do support for things like this without having remote access software and literally trying to walk somebody through something on the phone, and it was it was painful. I don't know if you were crying as a customer. I think I was crying the other end. It was hard work. So I think there's a lot of technology to help with that. If the machine is completely hosed, yeah, that's a different problem altogether. I think one of the most important things for the SOC, though, doing this remotely, be it SOC or help desk or SecOps, however you're set up, is making sure you're accessible. And that's the hardest thing. I mentioned about popping over to see Dave, other people are available when you think there's a problem, but do the employees know how to get hold of you? And are you responsive on that mechanism? Because I think the new problem we've got is someone says, I've sent you a message today. You almost get anxiety. You're like, well, I don't know, how have you sent it? There's so many different ways. So I think being really clear with the users about how they get hold of you if they're worried. And I think they can, they should be allowed to be overcautious more than ever at the moment, because, they're at home, they can't go and get advice from somebody. It's, being accessible, being easy to contact and being responsive makes such a difference. Otherwise, people will take stuff into their own hands, or worse, they'll call their mate who may or may not work for a security vendor. And that can go one of many ways.
Yeah, I think I agree. We should be paranoid as security companies. We should be paranoid, but that then further kind of extrapolates the problem to be a SecOps problem, because they're getting more noise in and they're having to filter out more stuff, and maybe less rich data from their users who are submitting a question. Oh, I've had an email, what do you think? Type stuff. So I think that's further enhancing the need to really have an automated process behind the scenes to at least get rid of the noise, or cut down the noise, or do some form of triaging enrichment before it falls onto a human's plate, who's, or anyone in SecOps now is dealing with more than they've ever had to deal with before, and that's saying something.
Yeah, agreed. I'm just having a look in some of the comments.
Yeah, as was I, and I was just about to ask about a couple actually. So I'll take the first one first. So it says ransomware has been a problem for longer than 12 months. So while it's still a focus itself, it's not necessarily a challenge. My own thoughts on this, I agree. Ransomware has been around for quite some time now, and I slightly disagree with the fact that it's not a challenge. Yes, there are things we can do, attack surface reduction rules and other bits that we can put in place in order to reduce it. However, what my forensics team specifically has seen over since May last year, was 1,000% increase in cases, and a good portion of those were ransomware. And actually, a lot of the skill and technique has massively improved. We're seeing, in standard ransomware events now, we're seeing an initial phishing or RDP compromise, followed up by some form of malware, would have been Emotet, TrickBot, QuackBot, those types of things. We're then seeing someone like SharpHound used, and SharpHound opens up an environment to look at users and groups and where they've got access and which accounts they need to target. We're then seeing the use of Cobalt Strike and the use of named pipes across the organization, and Windows as a standard, without running a piece of software like Sysmon from Microsoft. You just don't see named pipes getting opened or torn down across the environment. Then we're seeing the data theft going out via either DNS padding or ping padding in order to disguise it. And then we're seeing the ransom drop, and so from my perspective, based on what I see, I slightly disagree with the statement. What do you guys think?
I think it's, like you say, it's definitely more commonplace now that it's part of something else. It used to just be a lot more kind of like drive-by, who can we get from this? Let's see. It's definitely more targeted. It can be hiding something going on behind the scenes. Right at the beginning of COVID, some of the teams that are building this stuff and selling it and making profiteering from it, some of them took a step back and said, look, we won't attack healthcare organizations, and some of them didn't. And there's still, those are happening regularly. I think there was a couple in January even when that happened, which is it's absolutely despicable. I think I do wonder that we've become a bit ambivalent to it, because it has been around so long. And it kind of, I don't know if anyone remembers fake AV from back in the day. This was kind of the next generation of it. It was, how could you get people to give you money to have their stuff back? And it works. Unfortunately, that's the sad side of it. We can sit here as vendors saying, you shouldn't pay the ransom, you should, do this. There's been a lot to help with tools and stuff to help get things off of impacted machines, but ultimately a lot of people pay the money, so they keep doing it. So, it definitely hasn't gone anywhere. I think there's been another comment in the chat saying that it's not an extra challenge as a result of lockdown, which I think is fair.
Yep. Yeah. I would agree. I actually think it's a really good statement to make, because this is kind of what we want, is we want people to kind of challenge us and and seek a different viewpoint. So don't apologize. It was a good it was a good question to ask us, because I think depending on who you ask, you get a different view of the world, right? So please keep them coming in that regard. We like these things. It gives us a chance to to give a different opinion. Patrick, thoughts on that?
You've said it all. I'm not very often I'm speechless, but yeah, you've said it all. I was looking at the comment regarding like specifically on phishing and Microsoft, like 100%. Like both, I would say we're Google users internally, but both Google and 365 are so much better than they used to be at detecting, filtering, blocking those mails. But some always get through. Like I don't know the percentage numbers. It seems to differ from customers I speak to. Some customers, like they've got 3 guys, that's their full-time job, and yeah, we've got Office 365, and yeah, we've got this. So I'm not sure what makes these unique, but Microsoft have APIs like search and delete APIs. So you can just effectively have either a pre-built script or playbook to say something confirmed bad, remove from other mailboxes. So if that's a challenge for you, then that's solvable. And that's like internally, I'll tell you about the Palo Alto Networks SOC story. It took 18 FTEs worth of time per month that we were dealing with phishing, but we've completely eliminated that with a playbook effectively. So you can do things like you've got a great technology to do a lot of the grunt work for you, but there's always going to be something that trickles through. So yeah, that's a problem. You can definitely get a lot close to solving that.
Cool. And interestingly, Andre clearly knows where we're going today with with the questions. I don't know whether he's broken into us and looked at my webinar list or not, but it's an interesting thing because he mentions about false positives and negative impact and these kind of things. So one of the things we were going to talk about today was about false positives, and out of the report there was a huge amount about security teams chasing false positives and how much time is being spent on that. So could we have I think there was a second poll question, Michael, in relation to false positives and time being spent around that. Great, that's up, and we'll share the results with you when that comes up. I know the peer review can talk infinitum about false positives and these types of things. So rather than preempt what you're going to say, I'm going to be quiet for a while and ask you about time and effort spent on false positives and what you think and what kind of nuggets you've got for the audience about how they can improve not handling so many false positives and what they can do.
Go on, Sam.
Okay, all right, I'll go first. This topic drives me insane. So I worked for an antivirus vendor for a long time, and basically they make code that changes or removes code on machines every single day, and they release a new version of that every single day, plus have stuff in the cloud. So lots of opportunity there to make mistakes, some of which can be catastrophic, some of which can just be a pain, some of which you can do things to mitigate in-house. Both Patrick and I lived through one of the worst moments, I think, in said company's history. The numbers 5958, I think, strike terror still through the, the minds of many. It was also a good way of showing how quickly automation can work, is how quickly it can put a bad file around a network, which I think can really make people nervous of automation. But just to go back to kind of this specifically how much time we're spending, again, I think we've become like accepting of the fact that this is just part and parcel of working in security, and that we can have our highly trained, brilliant humans dealing with this stuff when they're not then able to focus on things that aren't known. And that it absolutely breaks my little SecOps heart. It really does.
And we wonder why there's a staff attrition problem when we're deploying technology. We've put the best of breed in there. We're fantastic. We've given them all the benefits in the world, and they're dealing with false positives for what, 50% of their time. I got out of working in the customer side because I was sick of that process, among other things, of course, but dealing with the deluge of stuff. Oh, cool, we bought more technology, so more stuff comes in. Oh, we bought another threat intel feed. What the hell did you do that for? We were absorbing 20 different threat intel feeds. You've given me one more, so I've got more data coming in that needs refinement. It's like the concept of we need more visibility is backwards in an approach to go kind of proceed as a challenge within SecOps to be as effective as possible. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah, I agree. I think, like I say, I think we've become accepting of it. I think, like I say, sometimes it could really, really, really cause a problem.
Yeah.
And yeah, we did a survey at Exabeam a while ago, and it was 25% of SOC time. And if you've got 8 to 10 people in your SOC, that's a good amount of people literally just sat there churning through rubbish, and they're not using their skills, capabilities, knowledge to look for things that aren't being picked up by the security tool, doing threat hunting, working on strategic projects. All that stuff is being wasted. That time is being wasted on mostly. I don't think any AV vendor, as an example, sits there going, "All right, we'll just screw somebody up today."
Yeah.
But there's loads of reasons why you see false positives, and it's not always down to bad coding. Sometimes it's it's done with a positive in mind. But it's not right that humans should be dealing with this. There needs to be, there are tools that you can put in place ahead of time that will stop this stuff from happening, or deprioritize it in your list. Because if it's just popping up with everything else, you've got no way of really farming out what's the thing you should be focusing on versus what's this noisy yelling thing in the corner.
Yeah, there's different types of false positives, like what Sam mentioned from a AV signature perspective, that legacy approach there, that could be harmful, but the AV's intention is good, to be more efficient. But what I'm seeing more of, and I've spent time in professional services where I've been on site, a customer site for a couple of days, chasing down an alert that says call back to C2 server. And it's like, okay, cool. So who's the host? Where have they come from? What's the user? What do they do beforehand? What is that? Where have you got that feed from? And it turns out that one of the, in this case, after 2 days of having to build this customer, it was a false positive because they'd subscribed to an open source threat intel that their mate told them about, and just so happens that they harvest bad IOCs and don't kind of remove them. So this was someone's home router that had flagged up in this report because the IP had changed, and I had nothing for them after 2 days. It was a, hey, sorry, but you're all clean. Sorry about that.
And it's just, that's so much time, and security hours aren't like dog years. I mean, the time goes past so quickly. And if you're sat there, you've got, it's worse when you have an alert in with no context like this, where you have to then sit there manually pulling information to try and figure out, is this thing real or not? It can take days, weeks in some cases. And then what are you not doing? That's the hard bit.
And it's the pressure of, well, why have we not had any breaches in the last 48 hours? Well, it's because I've been dealing with this, but you've been dealing with a false positive. So why didn't you know it was a false positive? That kind of blame culture. And again, another reason why analysts go, well, screw this. I don't need to sit around for this, trying to justify myself when I'm, dealing with the deluge of stuff that's coming in.
Also, I think it's harder to make that decision, right? If you're like, you've got to be super, super convinced that this really is a false. Because if you've got something come in and you've got, no, I don't think this is real, and then it turns out it's a breach. Yeah. Like that could be, a LinkedIn moment for sure. Yep. So there's no support circle around you and the right technology to help you make that decision quicker. Again, that's why people leave. It's definitely part of the attrition problem. Yeah,
very passionate about that.
We could talk about false positives all day.
I knew you could talk about false positives. I did warn the audience, to be fair. There was a warning in there, to be fair. Okay, so we got a problem in security with false positives, right? We've said we've got a problem with false positives. We've got a problem with attrition rates. We've got a problem with potentially credibility and justification. We also have a problem with with external actors increasing the amount of challenge that they place against each organization. So what do we do about it?
Who wants to go first? We automate.
We automate. That's the answer. Next question. What's up, Steve? Move on.
It might be a little bit more complicated than that.
I think you mentioned it, like attribution or attrition. I think there's some reason why we focus on that too much as an industry, and both from the analyst perspective, and everyone wants to know. Well, tell me, who are Fin7? Why have we got those TTPs from Fin7? It's like, who cares? Let's stop what we're doing. Let's use something better like MITRE, where they're taking in all that data and let's map ourselves to those and look at the techniques, and then we'll worry about attribution afterwards, if we have enough time, which we never do. But yeah, I think there's a problem in the industry where we focus on attrition and attribution too much. Like learn from those, but then like don't just look for, you know, what's the like assumption bias, where you're looking for to prove your theory that is that attacker group. It means nothing who's attacking you, really.
I've got a talk coming up around this saying attribution is BS. Changed my mind. It drives me nuts, and I'm sure everyone here on the call would have had a moment where they're dealing with something and somebody's walked over and gone, China, and you're like, I'm sorry, what? China. You're like, this isn't helpful right now. It's really not. I mean, I think most of us don't fall foul of the really big nation state stuff. I mean, I think if we move solar winds to one side, because I think this thing is going to run and run, unfortunately. But for the most part, North Korea's not after most of us on a day-to-day basis. Well, I mean, I don't know about me or you, but for the majority, that's the case. But yeah, trying to focus on the right things and not rat hole is really, really difficult. So, you know, whilst we deliberately said automation at the beginning, I think it's really important to put the right information in front of people so they can make decisions, and that the easy repeatable stuff is automated, so that when you do need a human brain on that problem, that they're available and they're not chasing a false and they're not looking at a phishing email that a machine could do. And we're using our people wisely, and that we're giving them interesting work. Here endeth the lesson. What do you think of that?
I concur. No, like that whole line of getting the false positive to false negative ratio correct is impossible. Let's set it there. Like you said, the impact of a false negative far outweighs the false positive. So you have to have some level of dealing with crap at some point. But yeah, automate that, the low hanging fruit. You know, if a user failed to log in 3 times, have an automation to contact them and say, did you fail to log in 3 times? If they don't respond, like automate again after 24 hours, whatever your SLA is, and copy in their manager. So don't let humans deal with those low fidelity, low priority type things until you know there's something worthy. If the user says no, then set the alarm off, set the criticality level to high, engage the SOC manager, do whatever you like, really. And yet, I think as well as false positives, I think like duplicate alerts as well is something that you know multiple people will deal with. You know, we've got 3 users fail to log in. That might be one event or one incident, or whatever our terminology is. There needs to be, that's what technology is good for, linking things, correlating things, and putting them together in one instant. And if it is a duplicate, then have technology automatically, you know, close down one like the other ones and link them together. So you only have one person working on one incident. The other people could do more interesting stuff.
Cool. Well, I'm going to ask another question. There's one that came in here, you know, about user education and awareness, and I'm going to take the user and education awareness challenge, but I'm also going to flip that as well. You know, how about, you know, the people in SecOps or the SOC or these kind of things? How about their awareness and training as well? Does that, you know, not just the user base, but actually, you know, our own people, you know, training, education, and ongoing investment, does that also help us to be able to spot false positives better and reduce the kind of mind-numbing boredom of looking through log files?
Yeah, I think there has to be a degree of business understanding. I think that's probably a shift that we've seen over a couple of years. Before, it was just a dark art. You're in the SOC, get in the basement, do your thing. But they have to have business awareness. Like if I'm working for, I don't know, Toyota, and I need to understand what threats are targeting manufacturing companies and automotive companies and all of that stuff. So I think there is a degree, I'm not sure if it's training or just broader awareness. And like, there's a lot of PMs now we're seeing in SOC that, you know, they're responsible for the reporting element, and they're also responsible for internal education of business type stuff as well. Sam?
Yeah, I think part of that is that having that partnership with the business helps with that. You know, again, when it was in the basement, in the SOC and Department of No and all that jazz, you know, the business was just this thing that happened, and the users were these annoying people that broke stuff, and you just were in your little bubble. And I've seen that change a lot, especially in the last 12 months, where that partnership's really helped, and that education has gone 2 ways completely. But I think the other part to this as well is, you know, everything moves so quickly in security. And feels very often when I talk to buddies of mine that it's still seen that you have to do your training for you to be better at stuff, whatever that might be in your role, in your own time. And not many jobs have that, where they expect you then to do your 8 hours or 9 hours or 12 hours or 16, pick your incident of choice, and then you go home and you learn. And some of us like doing that, right? Some of us think, yeah, brilliant. I actually do want to go learn this thing at night, but it'd be quite nice if I was getting paid for it. That would also be true. But if you're sat in this manual world of spending, 20 odd hours fiddling with your false positive, you haven't got time for your organization thinks it hasn't got time to train you up. So again, you're not being invested in and off you pop to somewhere else.
Cool. So I think that raises, another question for me about tenure and bits and pieces, and we see this, within the SOC report, is that generally the average the average lasting time of a security person or an analyst specifically within the results that we got out was about 18 months or so. Some of that's reminiscent of CISOs as well. So, I'm Bytes group CISO, and they tell me that my tenure is generally 2 to 3 years. So I've got up until July this year to leave, basically. Either that or I'm abusing alcohol or prescription drugs, which I'm doing neither. But I'm wondering if there's, we're saying there's a skills shortage. We're saying that there's a tenure issue in analysts. We've got a lack of people within the environment. Are we suggesting then that, CISOs get their analysts, and as they move on within 2 years or so, just go and take all their analysts with them?
Okay, then. I'm not so confident that they've got that relationship with the SOC. I'm not sure they're so entrenched. They're probably a consumer of reports that the SOC produce that they push on for compliance purposes. Are we compliant? What's our SLAs? But I can't believe that there's much of a linkage between those, to be honest, Steve, unless you're working with the Bytes SOC closer than other CISOs that I speak to.
I talk to my SOC every week.
Okay.
Good.
I spend time with my analysts every single week.
Good.
And whether that be level 1 or level 4 analysts, whether it be threat intel specialists, whether it be the SOC management team, it doesn't matter. I every week I'll spend at least an hour talking to the team and understanding what they found, and I'm on the calls every single week going through the reports that have come out of the SOC, looking at a root cause analysis and looking at where we need to change and how we need to do it, because it's important that from my perspective that it doesn't matter who you are in the organization, that you've also got access to me and my time. And you can say to me, Steve, you're an idiot. We need to change the way we do stuff because, fundamentally, we're working 20 hours a day, and actually, you're paying us for 21, so we're going to do an hour's worth of training. That never happens, clearly. But I try and get involved because it's really important for me at my level, to understand what's actually going on, whether people are engaged, whether they're getting the things that they need, whether the work's interesting or boring, and also where we are as an organization, so that when I get hauled up in front of my bosses and the board, my boss is the group CEO, I have to be able to explain what our risks are and how those are going to affect business objectives, and it's really important that the people in level 1 SOC analyst and standard analyst roles know that they actually play a key function to the level of information that I've got at my level. They play a key role in terms of identification and protecting the organization and helping us learn and move forwards. So I may be the exception.
I'm very glad you've said that. When we see it in our reports about there's a disconnect very commonly in organisations between what's happening on the front line and what's being reported up the chain. even down to like what the concerns are, what the biggest threats are, are the tools right? And if you've lost that communication and you're making decisions at your level, it's not a good thing. So I'm really pleased that you've said what you've said. Really pleased.
Excellent.
More of it, please, Steve.
Yes.
Spread the word.
So what are your thoughts then about, you know, how the people that we've got here today can improve that communication with their management teams and try and improve that relationship?
I think from my perspective, some of it just comes down to those people related things. It's if you're just looking at a report all day of like, you know, graph goes up, SOC doing well done SOC, and you're never actually speaking to the people and asking them, you know, what don't you see? Are they getting time for training in their work times? Are they happy with the work they're doing? Is the work interesting? Because that is one of the #1 reasons for leaving a job, is that the work is boring. And we all think that. It doesn't matter what your job is. If you're doing a boring thing all day long, you're not going to stay. If you've got other options, you're going to go, right? So, you know, do they really feel like what they already know is being used, or are they sitting there for hours on end? We did a study a little while ago about we have these timelines in our advanced analytics product that basically automates from start to finish what happened with a user account during log on to log off. And you can see there, so if there has anything been dodgy going on with the account, it will pop up and it's in a timeline. We went through and did that manually a while ago using one of our guys who'd worked in a SOC for a long time, did the manual queries, and it was over 20 hours that he would have had to spend sitting there doing query pivot to come up with this thing. And that just seems like the dullest work you can think of. And that's for someone who knows what they're doing, and they're basically glorified database admin. Like it doesn't make sense. So I think you need to go and talk to people and make sure that they're being valued, their skills are being valued, and you're invested in them. And you can't find that out from a report.
Yep. How do you do that from a bottom-up approach though? So if you're you know, an analyst and you need to filter these things up to, you know, the managers and then the senior managers and then the likes of me at C level. How do you do that?
I think it's having like pushing up, but it comes from the top down, like letting them know what their role is in making the company succeed. Like, you know, it's in all the good books of, you know, engagement, relationship with management, and that doesn't happen in so many places. You know, this is your job, get your face on the screen, on the 15 screens you've got, and find me some threats and be the hero. But without that level of business buy-in and understanding of what they're contributing to the business and the success of the business, you're just a job in front of 15 screens.
Great. I think you also hit on something that is tough, that sometimes going to speak to the CISO might seem terrifying. About, you know, can I just turn up and say, look, my work's quite boring, and you know, you should have the right structure in place through team leads and managers as well, that communication is open. If it's not, you've got a different problem.
Certainly.
But yeah, I mean, it can even be down to something as, I don't know, a little bit HR is, you know, surveys can work as well. You know, if you're, and not just, you know, 1 to 10 on questions that I really want to look good at. You know, given the opportunity to provide feedback, even anonymous feedback can be good. And actually, it might mean that people are more comfortable surfacing things that they wouldn't otherwise say, or for some reason they can't say if they're getting blocked in the middle management layer.
Certainly.
Cracking stuff coming in there, Steve. I'm sure you're reading these.
Yeah,
I am, mate. You know, that was one of the things. I know we need to talk about automation, and I know the pair of you can talk about automation for days. So we might have to just automate that and do it slightly quicker. Nice. But there's a couple of questions come in, and I quite like these. You know, the first one asks about what our thoughts are about having too many security tools. So I'm gonna shout security theatre here, which is, you know, the perception of security without actually having security, and some of that can be led by, you know, too many tools. What do you think?
Yeah, I'll go, but I wanted to ask you, Steve, like from a CISO perspective, that was something that I would be shouting at when I was in the SOC of, I've got 15 screens to manage. You know, everyone wants the best of breed technology, but there is a layer of complexity and lack of integration and interoperability that comes with having that. So it's a level of, I mean, I disagree with you think, but having a degree of consolidation has got to be a good thing, because you're dealing from the purchasing perspective, you're dealing with one buyer, you're getting the support you want, you can elevate yourselves, be trusted in that, I'm not sales, but you can maybe get the better discount if you're buying more stuff from the same same vendor. But there is ultimately, you want to knock down the friction and the route and the mean time to detect and mean time to respond by collapsing those layers, in my opinion.
I agree. I think I hate the term single pane of glass, and I work for a next gen SIM vendor. So, every now and then I'll jump on someone in a meeting and just be like, no, it's not. Nothing is. Nothing truly is a single pane of glass. And the tool you end up using most in the SOC, Notepad. Every time, because you've got so many other things going on, you default to using Notepad just to dump all the stuff in from all this other rubbish that you've got. And it's so true. I do think, integrations are really important. For a start, if you've got a bunch of tools and they're all just yelling noise at you, that's not going to help you. Are they integrated? Are they able to talk to each other? Can you, back to the automation topic, if you can get those tools interoperating, so you're not having to go and talk to all of them, and then when it, something flags up that actually now it's got information and it's got something for you to do, rather than poke around in flipping, okay, Notepad++, fine. It's got something valuable to you to do, and you can see those things working together. That's beautiful, and it's way better than having 15 screens open and Notepad++.
Yeah.
For sure.
And interestingly, as some are very hot on, in terms of work with customers and bits and pieces, is more tools don't make you better.
Yeah.
Right. Actually, they make you worse in lots of cases. Not being able to use tools correctly or to their ability, or have people that understand it. Now, the second part of that question was about outsourcing or outskilling of monitoring and bits and pieces there. And I think, from my side, there is some, there is some value in that, because, clearly, if there are things that are boring tasks, right? Let's look at some of those. Vulnerability management, endpoint detect and response. Some of those endpoint detect and response can be high skilled depending on what you're using, and can be exceptionally boring, for monitoring purposes and bits and pieces. So actually, outsourcing, outskilling is an opportunity. But what it does do is it brings me on to the next topic, which is about automation. I know my panel really love automation, love talking about it, and you'll probably find that they're about to publish a book on it or something like that, Sam especially. So can I have the next poll up, please, Michael, around automation? And one of the things that we were talking about, and this goes back to some of the other things we mentioned earlier, was about lack of people, skill shortage, lack of tenure. We're seeing that. We're also seeing an increased amount of time spent on chasing false positives. We're seeing moaning then about that we haven't got enough people to do that, but we're also seeing a lack of people suggesting that they're actually going to automate as well, or understanding, what automation is. What I can tell you is that criminals are automating at an absolutely horrendously quick rate. When I look at a lot of the dark web forums, and I do a lot of threat intel for customers and those types of things, the amount of adverts on the deep or dark web looking for AI in criminal locations, narrow AI, not general AI or machine learning or automation, is huge. I think there's more jobs in narrow AI, ML and automation in the criminal world than there is in the commercial world at the moment. So what do we think, team, about automation, and why do we think people don't do it, and what do we think the challenges and those kind of things are around there?
I think it's overrated, to be honest. No, it's over.
Right, okay, you've just spotted the lie from Sam today then.
I don't like licorice. No, I think, I've been working with it for a long time. I think there's a load of reasons why people don't get around to it. Some of it is a bit terrifying, not going to lie. Computers do things quickly. And I think when it first kind of popped up, especially on the SOAR side, you could do anything with anything, and it almost blows your head apart because you're like, I don't know what to do now. So you start tinkering, and maybe it works and maybe it doesn't. And if you don't sit and step back and say, you know, where's the low-hanging fruit? What's our repeatable, well-documented processes that happen over and over and over again? And you know, it's less, and it's not going to do a lot of business damage or, you know, knock out a domain controller or whatever. That's where you start. But I think just that bit of knowing where to start can be really difficult. And it is a bit scary that people think, you know, that it's going to either automate them out of a job, or it's going to break something where it's broken them out of a job. So it's much safer in the world of doing it manually, even though actually you're much more insecure off the back of it.
Yeah, I agree that if you're not mature enough to know what you want to automate, then you've got bigger problems, to be honest with you. I mean, automation could get you to somewhere you need to start getting, but you need to be more strategic. I think it relates back to that question as well, like buying best of breed, or keep buying solutions because you've got a new, an analyst has said you need a 3-letter acronym here or you're not secure. I think that's a reaction that makes you more insecure. You buy more vendors. And I think that's a bad thing. So it's the same approach of, why am I buying this? And should I be more strategic with this? And it's the same approach for your automation. What value can I get from automating that process that costs us 10 hours a week? Well, there's your value there. If you can get rid of that, you've got 10 hours a week. That's a quarter of an FTE saved, not being frustrated, annoyed, wanting to leave, looking at job websites, and he can click into the list of massive list that you've got. That's outstanding. I completely agree with Sam. There's a perception that you could be out of a job if you automate. Never once has that been the case in my 2 years working where I'm working in an automation company. It's always been, if we free up that guy, have you got a list of things that he could perhaps do? Oh yeah, we've got this. Wicked. There we go. There's your justification.
We have one of our customers literally got rid of their tier 1 function. Not the people, the function. The whole thing went, and it's all automated, and they trained everybody up, made everyone tier 2, and just, those people have stayed. They've had a much better experience. It's worked really well for them. And I think the other thing is, you don't have to automate response. I think good old Gartner and their acronyms, right? It's automation, orchestration, and response, and they're 3 separate things. So you can automate bits of something, intelligence gathering. A lot, phishing is the one that's commonly the first one people look at because it's such a time waster. Gathering investigation information so you can make a valid decision quickly is a perfect use of automation. Yeah. It doesn't have to be right, brilliant. Like, I'm not talking to people about automated patching, and they'd lose color in their faces, and then they'd go like green and purple, and then they just walk away.
Yeah,
it's terrifying.
Sorry, Sam. I think there's a misperception that you have to do all or nothing with automation.
Right, exactly, agreed.
You really don't. Like you would automate stuff that there's no mistakes with. Enrichment of an indicator of compromise from my 50 threat sources. Cool, done. But if you're doing things that could increase friction in an organization, like isolating the machine of a CISO's machine, Steve wouldn't like that if I went and automated that process. So you can have a degree of semi-autonomy, and with firewall changes. Do you really want to add that IP address automatic to your firewall? Hell no, nobody does that. But you could either tee it up and then have a manual process to make the commit, or schedule a change so it happens out of hours. So let the machines do the boring copying and pasting to take something and put it somewhere else, and then have that process underpin that.
Yeah, it's just doing it, getting comfortable with it as well. That's the thing. Yep. If you automate a whole thing end to end with no checks and balances as you go, that could be a moment where you have a rethink about your career. But doing those little bits, just all that time coming back, all adds up to something else you can be doing. And threat hunting is the one I always talk about because it's probably one of the least done things in security operations teams today, because they just don't have the time. So they're dealing with what they know or not the stuff they don't know.
Yeah, that and red teaming. Like, would you like to do red teaming? It's like, yes, we outsource that. Well, why don't you do it in-house if you just automate those 5 things there that are boring? Yeah,
and it's like, we don't have the skills, so we're going to pay someone. Okay, good, that's fine. But if you want to bring that in-house, maybe not be doing everything manually. Sure.
Kind of doing me out of part of my job now by suggesting that. But interestingly enough, the big one here was immaturity, a lack of understanding. as the, as a key one, why it isn't a high enough priority. And I think you touched on a really important point, is that everybody gets hung up on automating everything within a chain. And from what you've said, you've kind of said, start small, start slow, look at things that are consuming a huge amount of time and automate those. But also make sure that you ensure that there's neither a manual nor an automated process that creates unnecessary overlaps or gaps in the security that you're using or providing. Is that a fair summary? To what
I think that's a great summary.
That sounds strategic to me. Yep.
Excellent. We had kind of one final area, and we've only got a few minutes left. So there was a fourth poll, I believe, Michael, about compliance, and this was something Sam jammed in literally right before we started. So it was, has your organization purchased a new security tool purely to meet compliance requirements? And that was the last question. And interestingly, it's about 60-40 at the moment. So people are, oh no, other way now. The no's are winning. So Sam, seeing as you put this, why did you put this question in?
I've got my hat. It's interesting. So I am a GDPR bore, not going to lie. Get invited to dinner parties all the time when we're not locked down. I think this is a big problem, right? And people are still spending money on, it could be services, could be tool, because of the blimmin' auditors, or the ICO might come for you, all those things that are concerning. And also that's the stuff that tends to hit the board level, right? They're going to worry, they don't want to be fined. When we used to say we don't want to be the next target, and now it's, pick your breach of choice. Mensa got done last week, for God's sake. I think this is a real toughie, because it doesn't say anywhere in GDPR, automation is going to help you, as an example. It doesn't say anywhere in PCI, but we know that actually, even if this is the thing that's going to help you get budget to make these sorts of improvements, you can show that you can be more efficient, more accurate, better at stuff, more attractive to the opposite sex or the same sex. All of those things it can help with. So I think this is one of my big worries, that people say, yeah, I've bought this tool because of compliance, and actually they're not getting the very best out of it. So that was really where I was going with this. And I just wanted to show my hat off as well. That was really the reason.
Thoughts, Patrick?
In agreement. Yeah, compliance isn't. I'm not as enthusiastic about compliance as Sam is, so I'll let her have this one.
Fair enough.
There's despair in the chat, and I hear you. It's a horrible topic. I had an hour call about GDPR earlier. I just wanted to share my pain.
It was suggested that we just give every user an Etch a Sketch, and we might solve the problem. I think that was a genius idea that came in from Mike. As we're right on the end now, I'm going to ask you for a very short summing up from both of you. Single line or single couple of lines.
Does it have to have automate in there somewhere? I want to say any of those things. I think everyone's had a really tough job during this last 12 months, and it's going to continue for a while. So well done for all you're doing, security teams out there. It's hard, and I think good vendors, good partners will be there to help you through this stuff, and not just try and flog you stuff so you've got another tool for the sake of it. So keep doing what you're doing. Thank you.
Cool. Patrick?
Nicely said, Sam. Yeah, be more strategic. We say automate, don't just go and automate something you don't need to automate, and don't buy a technology that you don't need. Think more strategically. Don't fall for the vendor bait, I guess it is, and the market and analyst bait. You have to think more strategically and automate what you can, because it does have a material impact in yours and the SOC and the business operations. Cool.
And I suppose in summing up, I'll use in security, I use RuPaul's kind of approach. If you can't love yourself, how can you love somebody else? And it's the same with security. If you don't love security, how do you expect other people to love it? You know, I think we as a whole collective, you know, have got a lot of challenges and issues, and we just need to break these down, talk about them, and look at the problems that we've got, and work out how we can be more efficient and better at what we do, how we integrate more, how we communicate with other people in order to get them on the journey with us. And then, you know, we might stand more chance in some of these areas. And it finally goes to say, you know, that well, Mike says, I won't repeat the first bit, but he's going back to game development because it's clearly better. And I might come and join you, Mike, actually, to be fair. But it finally goes for me to say thank you very much all for listening today. Thank you for your time and coming along and listening to what we've kind of rambled on about. And hopefully you've kind of you know, found some of that useful, and there might be the odd nugget or two in there. And you know, if you want to ask further questions, please let the Bytes team know, and we'll put them out to Sam and Patrick. And if people have enjoyed this, then you know, we may be able to persuade them to do an encore. So, with nothing further to say, thanks very much, and we'll end there.
Cheers. Thank you very much. Cheers, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay.
Take care.
Bye.